and we're recording.
Okay, just to get started, so I see 3, right, students, that's who you see, that are here right now. So just to get started, since we have everybody here, do you mind kind of giving the particulars of the event and when and all that stuff real quick?
Sure. So for everybody that's online, this is for our 3MT competition. It is on Wednesday, March 6th at typically it's about 5:30 p.m. in
April 6th.
April. So, April 6th. We typically start about 5:30 p.m. and this year it's going to be in the University Center OSO room. And so what we will do, which will depend when we determine our number of participants, is we will give those competing a number, and that will tell you in line which number you are in your participation. We do it in kind of an audience. We have a nice group of judges to listen, and at the end also, you know, provide some decisions for us. Let's see what else. There'll probably be some more logistic stuff that we pass on as we get closer to the event, but for sure we know date, time, and location. And I think Sophia told me that I got the date wrong. So, let me.
I think it's Thursday, April 7th.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm actually going to put the link to the website, the 3MT website, in the chat. So I should have all that information.
Yes. And so people who are interested, the deadline to register is going to be March 2nd, which will be next week. We also do a little bit for those who would like, because it's optional, can submit a recorded copy of their presentation to us so we can provide some feedback. And that's going to be middle of March, and I'll get some of that info out in just a little bit. I don't want to get too far ahead. And we return some comments back on how to tweak it, things of that nature. We need the final slide, which will be at the beginning of April. And then of course the competition is going to be on April 7th, which is Thursday. And so I'll recap with that again at the end, but just to give you a little bit of a heads up, that's kind of where we sit right now. And like I said, it's pretty much we start at 5:30, 5 o'clock, depending on our numbers, and we'll let you know. And then usually award ceremony is about 6:30 that evening. Oh, Dr. Seidel, you're muted.
Darn it. Okay. But before I get started, is there anything else or questions that anyone might have right off the bat? Because once I get going, I'll probably keep rolling for quite a while.
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
So I teach 3:30 to 6:30 on Thursdays, but I would really like to participate. Is there any way that I'll be able to sneak mine in towards the end, or is that too late?
What we do is we'll probably wait a little bit of time to post a definitive time frame depending on how many students we have.
Mhm.
So we can get back to you. You are always welcome to let your students come and invite them to come to the viewing room and watch you present as well.
Okay, it's a lab, so I'm a lab TA. I might be able to finish early that day, but the official time that I'm teaching is 3:30 to 6:30. So I was just wondering if there was any leeway there.
And you may want to talk to your instructor. We have a lot of lab TAs who have presented with us in past years. And oftentimes there are workarounds for that,
Okay.
Zoe.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I also just wanted to ask really quick. So the deadline on Wednesday for the abstract submission, I just wanted to ask, what time is that the deadline for the abstract? I hope to try and get it in before then, but I know I'm running an experiment that day. So I just want to see if there was like noon or
Midnight.
afternoon.
Midnight.
Okay, midnight on
Yeah.
Wednesday. That's
End of the
perfect.
day.
Okay. That's I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you're ready, what I want to do, what I usually do is just go over kind of tips for building these things, just kind of an overview. And if you've never seen one of these things, so you get kind of a good idea of what it's about. That being said, okay, I'm going to launch a PowerPoint. So I'm going to share this screen. Oh, I'm disabled now. Can you?
Let me move this over. Okay, you should be a host now.
Okay, let's see if it'll work. Yep, that'll work. And hold on one second, just gotta launch this thing. Now let me just do the swap. There we go. Does everybody see that? Okay, so I just realized this is not exactly the same PowerPoint that I usually give, but this will work fine, okay, for what you need. So just want to give some few tips as you're making these. So just so you kind of understand where this came from, I was working in the College of Graduate Studies. I don't know how many years ago that was now. Okay, let's go faster over here. But when the Grow Center got started, that was kind of what I was in charge of, kind of moving into there and bringing the 3-minute thesis competition into Corpus. Okay, so when I found out about it, I had no idea what it was. Okay, so what Joanne Canales, the dean at the time, made sure I did was I went and kind of did my investigative work and attended some of these and really just absolutely fell in love with them. I don't know any other format where you can go hear so much interesting stuff research wise and never get a chance to get bored because people have that 3 minutes. And if they're doing it right, they are capturing your attention the entire time, right? So that is kind of one of the things you're trying to do. Now, 3 minutes, not a long time. And so I think one of the big mistakes people often make is to think, oh, well, I'll just do this right before it's due, okay? And put it together. And there's a lot of thought actually that goes into this. You have to, and sometimes it's a pain, really kind of deciding what you're not going to talk about, right? And really narrowing things into what would be most interesting to the audience. And you have to actually change the way you speak, okay? To be speaking in a language that anyone can understand. You can't assume that these people are in your field, okay? So it's a little tricky. So I started watching these things, and I don't know how many I've seen. I've seen regional competitions. We're hoping it would be great if we get a copy of something that came out recently that had all the regional winners across the US. Those people were fantastic. And so the more you watch, the better, I think, for you. And it's really easy to find these. You just put 3MT winners into Google and they're everywhere. Okay, so please do that just so you get an idea of what you're up for. I have a couple on here. I'll show you. I'll probably just do one because I don't want to bore you too badly. Okay. But here's the concept, right? The 3-minute thesis is a research communication competition that was developed at the University of Queensland back in 2008. So it hasn't been around that long. The premise of the competition is develop academic presentation and research communication skills. It supports the development of students' capacities to effectively explain their research in a language appropriate to an intelligence but non-specialist audience. Okay. And essentially, if you agree to run one of these at a university, it's not like you can just do anything you want. You have to follow the rules, the 3M2 rules set forth by University of Queensland. So that's what we end up doing. Now, I apologize. Some of this has been adopted to fit classroom because I started moving 3MT into some of my classes that I teach at both the graduate and undergraduate level to get more used to doing these kind of things. But yeah, you have essentially 3 minutes, right, to present a compelling oration, that's Queensland talk, on their topics and their significance. The 3MT is not an exercise in watering down the research, right, which is easy to kind of see why people might think that. It's really kind of a simple version of things. But it forces students to really consolidate their ideas and concisely explain their research discoveries. Some of the real values of being able to do that are when you leave this university and you go off to actually apply to work at other institutions or jobs, and you're bound to have someone ask you, can you tell me about your dissertation or thesis? And you should, after doing this, just have a big smile on your face because you go on automatic and you're excited about the idea. And if you come off that way at an interview, you win, essentially. So it is a great thing to just have in your back pocket, I think, after doing all this. That being said, of course, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Okay, so what are you allowed, right? You're allowed a single static PowerPoint slide. Okay, so no slide transitions, animation, and movements of any description are allowed. The slide is to be presented from the beginning of your talk to the end. Okay, you can't have anything else. No additional electronic media, sound, video files. I think someone's asked me before, can I have a pointer? And I'm going to say no. Okay, to that. So yeah, can't have costumes, musical instruments. Okay. You're limited to 3 minutes maximum. And this is the one thing to keep in mind, right? Competitors that exceed that 3 minutes are disqualified. I would say by competition, people really know. So I'm not sure we've ever disqualified an individual there. Usually they're right at the end where we have that timer. You can have the timer as well if you like to practice with. But when that goes off, people are usually maybe thanking the judges for listening, and that's fine. Okay, presentations are spoken word, so you can't do poetry, can't rap up there, can't sing. Okay, and presentations, of course, are going to take place up on the stage. You can move, all right? There's movement. You can't move around the room, but you can move around the stage. And one thing I would just kind of point out, there's a thing where I think it's really cool that some speakers have this mastered, where they move about the stage, but it's with so much purpose. Like they start off at the front of the stage where they begin introducing their topic, okay? And then they'll move back a little bit when they go into perhaps talking about the problem they're dealing with, the method and so on. And then by the end, they come back and they get up close to the audience again, okay? So if you do move around, make sure it has some kind of purpose. You can gesture, okay? No middle fingers though, okay? And but yeah, you can do those things. Non-verbals are okay, right? The presentations, of course, considered to commence once you start speaking, the timer begins. Okay, any questions about those? All right, I think, like I said, the more you watch, the more you get it, okay? As far as the judges are really going to be looking at two main things. One is comprehension and content, and the other one's engagement and communication. So, right, comprehension and content deals with, just like it sounds, right, the presentation provided understanding of the background to the research question being addressed, okay? If you're doing it right, you're telling the story of your work, okay? So we'll talk about hooks and things like this, but you want to tell this story, right? Because you want to bring the audience in and, right, be riveted, right, to every word that you speak. Did the presentation clearly describe key elements and the research, including conclusions and outcomes? Did you have a logical sequence? Was it organized, right? Was the topic, ideas, research significance, outcomes communicated in language appropriate to the non-specialist audience, of course? Okay, so of course, when I say that, you're going to avoid jargon, right? If there's terms that a normal audience person wouldn't know, right? You're going to have to clearly define those if you want to use them. But the use of analogies, metaphors, those kind of things are really useful, okay, while giving these talks. So if you can think of a thing that everybody understands, okay, that's like what you're doing, right? Those things can be really useful, so they can relate to them. Let's see, did the spinner spend adequate time on each element, or is there one that was really briefly done and that should have been done more? Okay, just to fit it into the time. So how you use that 3 minutes, pretty important. Okay. As far as engagement and communication, right? Did the talk make the audience want to know more? There's the riveted factor, right? And of course, that really is a very judgment call of the judges. I mean, they're listening to you. It's like, how interested was I as a judge, right? And did the presenter convey enthusiasm? Of course, that helps. You don't want to trivialize things, right? You want to capture and maintain the audience's attention, okay? Did the speaker have sufficient stage presence? I'm going to talk about this in just a little bit too, okay? And maintain that steady pace, confident stance. You know, people hate listening to themselves, but it's really a must to record yourself when you do this so you can know what other people are seeing. Because no matter what you do, when you get up on stage, you're going to be talking a lot faster than you realize, okay? And so it helps to do some recording of the self for yourself. And then of course, the PowerPoint slide, don't forget you have that thing. It can be really useful. Make sure it kind of relates to the talk. Don't take a slide and jam it full of too much stuff that no one can read. You know, font size is really important. A lot of times what people do is just have an image up there that relates to the theme of your talk. Okay, you have total freedom to do kind of what you want on there. If there's something about a methodology, for instance, that's pretty complicated, maybe a visual aid would be helpful, and you might want to devote some of your slide to something like that. Okay, but overall, most slides that I see, I really try to capture a theme. Okay, questions with that? Okay. All right. So when you design your talk, now you have freedom. You don't have to go with this. Okay. The more talks you have, you might find things that follow different approaches. This came about in identifying these sections mainly because I've seen like 1,000. Okay. And I was put in charge of trying to put this PowerPoint together. And after looking at a lot of them, it really was clear that there was kind of an organization that was probably the norm of those talks. Okay. But yeah, creativity is always appreciated. And if it works for you, yeah, you can change this stuff around. But generally, there's about 6 parts to these things. Okay. There's what I'll call the hook or the opening, which you introduce the topic of study in a way that grabs the audience's attention. Don't ever start with the words, research has shown. Okay, don't do that. Okay, it's a killer. You know, you lose the audience really quick. Instead, involve the audience. You can tell a story, a personal story. Okay, if you can make the audience cry, you win. Okay, so in fact, most of the winners from 3MT competitions, I have these stories that relate to some family member that ended up dying in the end. And I'm sorry, that's really sad. But yeah, I mean, they really kind of hit you emotionally. And when you can do that, it really, you score highly with the judges. I'm not saying you have to make them cry that way. Maybe cries of joy, you know, who knows? Okay, but anyway, you want to evoke an emotional response if you can. It's kind of the trick. Then there's kind of the problem. I would almost call this the foundation now. If I could change this, I would try to change the word, but where you're conveying the problem to the audience in terms they can understand and appreciate its importance. You want to kind of communicate where the whole idea came from, right? And it should be linked in some way to the field of study that you are, you know, that you're studying. Okay, so where did this idea come from? Okay, tell them the story of that thing. This should most likely end with the research question, right? Now, some of you have study 1, study 2, study 3, study 4, right? You just really want one big question, right? What's the general question that's being asked? And it's a really good thing to really kind of state it very clearly after you go through the problem, because what that will do is mark the transition between going from the problem to really the approach, right? And the approach is nothing more about than your methodology, which this one, I think, for students is the most difficult one. And the difficult part is trying to explain what you're doing to an audience that has no idea, okay? You're about it, you know, information about your field. And so the language can get really kind of dangerous when you get into your approach. So once again, use of analogies, metaphors, anything to make this a little more clear to the audience. Okay. After the approach, of course, people are going to wonder what you found out. Okay. So what kind of conclusions did you make? Okay. And you can almost blend these two together at the end. But where you want to end is with kind of a big picture and be looking at how is it, you know, what you found, your research here, why is it important? How did it actually change the world? And all these things change the world in some little bit, okay? So it gets really kind of grandiose, I think. And if you're doing it right, you'll link this last thing you talk about all the way back up to the hook of where you started, do that nice circular kind of writing, and in this case, talking type of approach. And if you can do that, you got a beautiful talk, okay? It's so easy to say, but it's so difficult to kind of put those things together. Okay, but if you're passionate about what you do, yeah, it'll kind of shine through. Now, I've talked about a lot of this already, so I'm going to really kind of go quickly over the different parts. And if you have questions, I'm going to stop for each one if you have questions. Once again, down at the bottom, there's a link to a site here, just 3-minute thesis, you know, at Queensland. But once again, if you just type 3MT into Google, you're going to find this stuff. Okay. But if you want the original one over at Queensland, there's that. They have a link to, I should say, more like hundreds or whatever videos of students giving talks. Those are going to be in Australia. So just realize that you're going to hear the Australian accents, which really kind of work for you if you can have one. You know, that's kind of nice. Okay, but it's might be better to just type a big university name and do 3MT in the Google site, and that'll link you to 3MT competitors that perhaps won at their university level at a different school. Okay, so I know if you would make it to regional, you're going to go against like North Carolina State, Duke, okay, Florida State, Florida Atlantic, all these different universities you can think of, Georgia, okay, that are in that region that we are, okay. It's a big region, by the way. Okay. All right, but you know about the hook, telling the stories of how all that works. let me stop right there because I've already kind of described the hook. Does anybody have any questions about it? Okay, I just really am trying to give you an overview without boring you too much. Okay. Like I said, the problem, if you want to change this around, call it the foundation, right? You want to see that clear link between the hook that you had and the big picture kind of version of all of this, and talk about the problem. And of course, this goes into why you're studying, what you're studying, where did this thing come from? Okay. And of course, if you can convey why the audience should consider it an important thing, right? That's a wonderful thing. But once again, avoid jargon, keep it out of there. Okay. Any questions about that? So if I'm oversimplifying it, let me know. Okay. The research question, I know I have a lot written here, but I just want to make sure you realize it is a really important piece of the talk. It's only going to take a couple seconds of your talk, but to have a really crystal clear statement of that research question is really cool to have in your talk. And you kind of slow down, make sure that participants hear it, understand it, and usually following that, what you get to do is say something like, if you're doing the research where you approach the problem, you get to say something like, and this is where I come in, some kind of language like that, right? Which once again keeps the audience involvement kind of peaked, and then you go into essentially your method. Okay. Let's see, approach or application of theory, all this stuff. So you just stated your research question. The audience, of course, is begging to hear what you chose to do to answer this question. So you have to fill them in on that approach that's there. And once again, the dangerous thing is watching your time, right? You don't want to appear rushed in all this. So you want a description that doesn't dumb it down too much, but most of you are doing things that are complex enough where you could talk for 30 minutes on this, okay? So to reduce that down to, less than a minute, okay, it's pretty tricky because that's about all you got, okay? All right, conclusions. I think the one main thing I just wanted to add here is, don't try to draw all your conclusions. You'll never make it, okay? There's so many conclusions that people can draw. Just make sure that you're focused in on the biggies, right? Which ones are you most excited for, okay? And if you're excited about them, don't forget your nonverbals, right? It should be obvious that you're excited about it, okay? So let those nonverbals show. And the same way, if, God forbid, your study didn't work out so well, where your hypotheses, you failed to find evidence for what you really wanted to show, right? And you're really disappointed. That's okay too, as long as you're showing the audience that, okay? Let's see, questions with that? Hearing none. Move on. And then there's the big picture, right? Told people what our conclusions are. You're in the home stretch, right? Big finale here. So bring your talk full circle, returning to that big picture problem you started with, right? If it links into your hook somewhere, that's even more beautiful, I think, when you talk about these things. So, the first thing you talked about, if it's the last thing you comment on, is wonderful. And the last things out of your mouth should be probably delivered super slow, right? Use that super slow motion so it's really obvious that this is the end of your talk, right? Okay. Okay. Any questions over any of that structure? And once again, I just want to emphasize, you don't have to use that structure. I just want to give you one that I think represents kind of the norm of the talks that you'll see. Okay, so the most common mistakes overall, right? Students failed to connect their research to the big picture, okay? Or they didn't work hard enough to engage the audience curiosity about their ideas, and didn't work hard enough on kind of that, right? Keeping attention and having presence overall. Some students neglect the visual component of the presentation, where there's this slide that actually is never referred to or doesn't relate all that well to the talk, right? So make sure it does add to things. The students didn't leave enough room to practice the presentation. That's the killer. Okay. If I would recommend anything, it's the student that kind of gets their talk done early and then starts rehearsing like crazy so they actually have everything memorized. Because you get to a point where you get to different levels. This takes me back to my dissertation days. I used to study this theory known as action identification theory, but it was the idea that the more practice you have something, the less cognitive capacity you need to actually speak about it and so on. So things become automatic. And when things become automatic, you can start playing to the audience, okay? And it looks great if you're able to do that. But the only way you get there is, no secret, practice, practice, practice. Let's see, last thing, maybe students failed to demonstrate their enthusiasm for the topic, right? So you don't want to be up all monotone, make sure you have a lot of voice inflection and such, and you'll do absolutely fine. Okay. So there's, I believe, Letitia, this PowerPoint is up online, right? Something like it. Okay. So I'm going to have you, I'm just going to point out some things. There's a few talks here. I mean, if you want to see them tonight, you can tell me. But this first one at Purdue University, this is an English as second language person who's done really well. But I picked this one just because it represents these parts of the presentation extremely well. So you can see it one right after the other. Well, in fact, I probably should show you. Okay. So let's go through that and see if this works.
Our next presenter is Kartik Sukumar. Kartik is a PhD candidate with Dr. Moeller studying computer graphics technology from the Polytechnic Institute. Kartik is from Bombay, India, where he spent 25 years of his life before coming to Purdue for his master's and later his PhD. He is the ex-captain and president of the Purdue University Cricket Club. He recently got married, and his wife, who graduated from Purdue, also participated in the 3MT finals. So it runs in the family here. He is extremely passionate about sports, and his first love will always be sports, much to his wife's chagrin. One day he hopes to open his own sports performance and analytics company. The title of his talk is Inside the Mind of an Expert.
Hey, how many times have you seen a Peyton Manning make that inch perfect pass and thought to yourself, wow, how did he do that? Or listen to Adele or Beyonce hit that perfect note that completely mesmerizes you. I've always wondered what makes certain people excel in their field and set them apart from others. As I was beginning to explore, to identify differences between experts and novices in different fields, aircraft pilot performance seemed the perfect fit. Did you know 80% of air crashes are caused due to pilot error? In 2009, an air crash led the Federal Aviation Administration to change a regulation on pilot recruitment. Instead of 250 hours, pilots now require 1,500 hours to pilot a commercial US carrier. This change in regulation clearly shows the importance of experience, flying hours, and most importantly, expertise in piloting an aircraft. This brings me to my primary research question. Are there significant differences between expert and novice pilots based on their brain activity? Now, I use an electroencephalographic or an EEG device to measure brain activity in expert and novice pilots. The recorded brain activity helps me understand the specific parts of the brain and the dominant cognitive processes while they are flying. Surprisingly, what I found was the expert pilots show significantly lesser brain activity than novice pilots, which is a direct result of more efficient brain usage. I believe these cognitive processes that are specific to expert pilots are integral to achieving expertise. Keeping focus on the specific parts of the brain, we can now develop better training tools and tests for novice pilots. This change will help in accelerating their progress from a novice to becoming an expert. Moreover, I also believe that this idea is not specific to pilots alone. We can use this research to and extrapolate it to understand expert performance in so many other fields. So next time you see a Manning or a Beyonce perform, think of me. I might just know the secret.
Let's see. Okay, but I hope when you kind of saw that one, you could kind of go, okay, there's that part, that part, right? All those ingredients were right in there. The second example down here, I'm not going to show right now, but if you were interested, I picked someone that actually used this really wild kind of vocal inflection. She did like imitations of people in the middle of it, but just the importance of making sure, you know, tone of voice is, you have very much control over things, and you purposely, right, don't talk that's, you know, so monotone, but you're all over the place to keep the attention, but it's very purposeful at the same time. Okay, so the trickiest part of all of this, right, is kind of mastering the secret ingredient. And this one, you know, I don't even think the psychologists probably know exactly how to describe this to the T, but I'm going to try. Okay, so you want to have stage presence, but I mean, what does that mean? Okay, so stage present probably means that you speak with this awareness of how your audience is responding, right? That is, you react to what your audience needs. You're out there, and of course, hopefully you're getting them excited, but when you notice that they are curious about something, you're able to react to clarify what they need and kind of serve their needs as well. And the only way you can do that is if you know your talk so well, right? Use body language consistent with your presentational goals, right? Move with authority and purpose. Kind of mentioned that earlier. So if you do a little movement around the stage, right? And you might want to divide that up into different segments of your talk, right? And it really kind of helps people separate the different things you're doing, okay? From the hook, from the problem, to the research question, to the methodology, whatever, okay? But you can separate that just by moving about the stage a little bit. Okay, maximize vocal expressiveness, just talked about that one, okay? Don't go 100 miles an hour, right? You want to speak slowly and deeply. And of course, at the very end of the talk, you get extra slow to really drive the, you know, the precious words you have at the very end. They should be the most precious of all. And you deliver those, right, kind of flawlessly at the end. Develop the content of your speech so that it will lead the audience to respond the way you would like them to, right? If you're using humor, please test it out. Okay, because sometimes what we think is funny may not be in the end. So it's always good to kind of know how your audience will respond and be able to predict that. And finally, and this is really, I think, a flaw of a lot of school in general, people don't get enough time on stage. Now, if you've had drama training, you have certain advantages, right? But you want to be comfortable with being in the spotlight. And that's kind of one of the big reasons we want to do this contest anyway. Okay, is give your time in the spotlight, and hopefully you get comfortable doing that with time. Okay, so here's presence, right? You want to be passionate, right? Comfortable, confident, right? Enthusiastic, authentic, right? And captivating. Yeah, that's an easy thing to teach, right? But yeah, if you can master that, you have it, okay? And I want to show you someone that does, right? So the one talk I want to give, this is actually the one, for me, it's the best talk that I've heard and come across online. And there's ones that probably rival it and so on. But Rosanna Stevens, who I don't know if she might have been a runner-up, to tell you the truth, at one of these competitions, but I think won probably her local and so on. But she's going to give this talk, and her slide is just a blank white slide, but it's there for a purpose, and you'll get that. But what I want you to get out of this talk is just the idea of her presence and how she kind of carries herself in front of the audience, and how comfortable she seems to be in front of others, and how she's using nonverbals throughout. There's just so many elements of this thing when you start to break it down, all done very, very kind of masterfully. Okay, so here it is. Let's try this.
Can I introduce you to the stage, Rosanna Stevens, from the ANU College of Arts and Social Sciences. And the title of Rosanna's talk tonight is Now You See It.
It might seem as though I've started speaking with a blank PowerPoint slide behind me, but there are actually a bunch of things on this slide. You just can't see them yet. To your right is a Ferrari I drew myself in white. To your left is a soy latte in a white takeaway cup. And in the middle is a home I drew myself in white, a home among the gum trees. Lots of plum trees, clothesline out back, veranda out front, and an old rocking chair. It's interesting how you can't see things when the context they're surrounded by makes them seem invisible. Suddenly this slide full of nothing is full of white stuff. You just needed help to see it. Here's something else you can't see. This slide is actually a black slide with a white rectangle pasted over the top of it. Over 200 years ago, white people arrived and settled over the top of already established Aboriginal life. And colonization happens today. The settled way we are encouraged to live, the ways we are encouraged to learn and consume, how often we are encouraged to wash, and the ways we think about and use nature are actually pretty white. People who fit into this society are taught to think of it as normal and awesome, but if you don't fit in, whiteness is very visible because it can be depressingly inescapable. Aboriginal and Black academics and activists are suggesting that one of the first steps toward creating a more equal and considerate society is for white people today to identify and understand the dominance of our culture. From there, we can challenge how, in modern Australia, one way of life smothers another. But it's difficult to challenge something if you've been taught not to see it. Is a job white? Is a house white? Is organic gluten-free food white? If I fall into the vortex of cat videos on YouTube and I'm wearing my pajamas, am I just procrastinating or am I white procrastinating? My research is about understanding what whiteness looks like and how it works. I'm collecting and analysing Aboriginal accounts of feeling unwelcome, ignored, and misunderstood in society. And from that material, I'm piecing together a picture of white Australia that we can begin to debate. My thesis is a novel. The plot is a secret, but this conversation needs to be communicated well beyond the walls of the university. My hope is that research in this field will point toward a more equal, considerate, and respectful Australia that is so much more than just white.
Okay, so yeah, I hope you can kind of see why I chose that one. Okay, overall, but yeah, she's
When it
kind of
comes to
amazing.
getting the right food and supplements your body needs, don't guess, test. Your body often sends you
Darn
signals
it.
when something is out of balance, expressing themselves as different symptoms. Science has shown that gut dysfunction.
Stop. Okay, sorry about that. Where were we? Okay. There we go. Okay, so anyway, really getting near the end of this. So don't neglect the slide itself. I think in this thing, that same person that gave that talk, she also has a link recording talking about the slide and what you might do with it. The title of your talk doesn't have to go on your slide. I think a lot of people think, oh, I must put my title. No, the audience is going to know your title anyway, so you don't have to put it on your slide. You don't have to put your name on the slide. It can be used any way you want, right? Because the audience already knows a lot of that stuff already. Okay, so you have a lot of freedom with what you use on that. Okay, so good presentations. Right, general, gauge the audience, and then connect the research to the real world, right? As far as your talk, right, make sure you're speaking clearly, comprehensively, right? Be really choosy on the words. And if you went back and looked at that talk we just looked at as well, I mean, and really started looking at the individual words, that she was using in it, they were really chosen well. Okay, very precisely for it. Use active verbs, shorter words, shorter sentences, right? You want to reach the maximum audience that way. And of course, pace yourself, find a rhythm, and yeah, and really consciously slow that talking speed, because when you get up on stage, everybody does it, right? It just seems to speed up. Okay, so when you time your talk, you want to be really close to 3 minutes, right? But when you actually get up on stage, you're probably gonna come in, who knows, 15 seconds early. Okay, just do that increase in speed. Okay, so practice your material, delivery, right? Get it where it's committed to memory, because you're not allowed any note cards, right? Where everything is just so automated, it's like a song. Right? No singing though. Okay, so there we go. And once again, if you need good videos, they're all over the place, right? So just search 3MT on Google and you will find just about everything that you need. Okay, it's there. And that's about all I have. Do you folks have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
Does it matter what stage of your thesis you're in?
You want to have, I think the way we've done these competitions for, you should have some data collected where you can draw some conclusions. Okay, at least take a shot at them. It doesn't have to be completely finished, right? Otherwise, we would probably not have all that many contestants. Yeah. But you should have something to speak about. Okay, it's the idea. That's the best situation. You don't want to be up there doing just a proposal.
Okay, gotcha.
One question, will we be recorded like in these videos?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Oh, use a record.
Yeah, like we will be recorded. when presenting this?
Oh, I think that is true.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
so yeah, we'll be recording the competition.
Yeah, will this be streamed live?
We streamed it last year. And so depending on capabilities, we might do it again. If not, then we'll post the recording afterwards.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure yet.
Will this PowerPoint be posted for reference anywhere?
It's already up,
Oh, it is. Okay.
and Letitia can tell you where probably.
Yeah, it's gonna be on the 3MT site. I just put the link in there. I'll try to pinpoint where it is. If not, we'll get it again from Dr. Seidel and we'll post it right after this.
Okay.
But I'm almost positive it is.
And I'll just mention too, I mean, you can sit there and Google that stuff too. You can do 3MT tips, or there's 3MT sites all over the school. So if you'd like to see what A&M offers, or UT, or, you know, or you go to other schools, I think even, I wouldn't doubt Harvard has stuff as well. And Dartmouth, you know, you wanted to see what the Ivy Leaguers are doing. You can actually go to their sites, and there's all sorts of tips about doing these things and how you should talk. I mean, I've seen stuff on, you want it to be this conversation between you, you and the audience. And there's recorded lectures on how to do these things as well. So there's plenty of material out there. You got to decide which one you want to listen to and so on. Here, my goal was really, I just want to give you a format to use for your talk that I think is very effective and very, I think, represents the norm of what's out there. Okay. No more questions? I think we're good then, right?
Thanks. So, can y'all see my screen now? Okay, so I just wanted to go back real quick again over upcoming deadlines. You can find the application on the 3MT website. The deadline is March 2nd, midnight is fine. Complete the application, print it. It does require a signature from your faculty sponsor on there. So make sure you get that to us. We talk about eligibility, which Dr. Seidel has talked about. The prizes, which we have 3 prizes, and the very last one is the People's Choice. So that's where Dr. McCaleb was talking about bringing people from your classes and stuff. That's where that comes in handy, because we do want you to be able to present in front of an audience, and for people to appreciate what you've put into this. We do have the rules again about the slide, about the timing, and all of that. And the judging criteria is here as well, everything that Dr. Seidel's went over. And then just some important dates. The deadline is March 2nd. For those who would like, because it's optional, you can do a recording of yourself with your slide, with the max time being the 3 minutes. We do pay attention to that on when you send that to us. If you want to do that, we ask that it's into us by the 16th so that we can review it and get you feedback. And we promise to get out everybody's feedback to them by the end of March. And then we will require everybody to submit that one final slide. So maybe after you've done your submission to us, we've given you some feedback. You get to fix it up. You still have time. We'll need it by April 1. We'll send out final details about the competition. We'll send out information before that. As soon as you've submitted your registration to us, we start doing some additional communication about place and time and things of that nature. But for sure, our last ones go out April 4th. And then, of course, the competition is on the 7th. And then we do have several different slides here, video, and we'll post this one on here. The video that we have here is from last year. And we'll post this one also. And then we have the video information if you want to submit to us and how to do that. And then you can look at past winners. And then of course, there's the official 3MT website and some additional resources there. But if you need anything or have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Sophia, who's also on this call. We can help you get your questions answered, walk and talk through the process as well. If you have any questions, just let us know.
Yeah, and keep in mind, don't do this alone. I don't think you need to. I will talk to anyone. Okay, so if you need help, I want you to involve your mentors as much as possible as well, though, and because they'll be aware that you're doing this. And I think I haven't found one out there yet that doesn't really kind of love this kind of format, at least talking, and doesn't see the value in it. So yeah, they I'm sure would be willing to help as well. Okay, but if you have any questions for me, just give me a call, okay, or email me. Happy to help.
Okay, well, on that note, if nobody has any questions, I'll stop recording. And oops, I turned off my video and not the recorder. That might have